Weilà raga, how's it going everybody? Welcome to another lesson in our Zero to Hero Italian grammar series here on YouTube, where we are looking at Italian from the most basic and working our way up to the most advanced topics. We are once again happily in advanced Italian with the Congiuntivo Trapassato, the fourth main form of the congiuntivo. So if you haven't seen our past lessons on the congiuntivo, be sure to check them out, as well as all of the other lessons in our series. And as always, if you'd like to work with me live, I give live group lessons every weekend on Zoom. Check out the link in the description to learn more. Without further ado, let's head on over to our digital whiteboard. So today we're looking at the congiuntivo trapassato. Excellent. Congiuntivo trapassato. So, simply put, the way you could just think of the congiuntivo trapassato in a nice, easy, and straightforward way, this is the compound version of the congiuntivo, I'm just going to do some shorthand, imperfetto. So let's just do a little review of all of the congiuntivo in terms of formulas, our straight to the point, bare bones formulas that we've been using. And then that'll work our way up really, really seamlessly to the congiuntivo trapassato. So let's do formulas. Okay. Now, obviously, a language is something that is very versatile. And so I wouldn't go as far as to say this is the only possible way of forming the congiuntivo, but this is like a surefire, easy way to do it to make sure, hey, you want to say something like this? Follow this. It's at least something you can hold on to in many situations. So we have congiuntivo presente. We were writing things in the indicativo, presente, and then in the second half of our sentence after the che, we would have the congiuntivo presente. Okay, so what does that look like? You could say penso, then che, so penso, che, and congiuntivo presente would be like penso che sia. Okay, I think that it is. Now we have congiuntivo passato, which is simply the past, compound past version of what we just had here up above. You can start your sentence in the indicativo presente, then you have che, and then you can have congiuntivo passato. So as this is just the compound past version of what we have above, we could say penso plus che plus sia stato, using avere and essere as helping verbs. So to show avere, you could say penso plus che plus abbia fatto. So there you go. And obviously, if a female were speaking, you could also say sia stata. Let's do a little bit of highlighting. I always love highlighting. So let's do, with the congiuntivo presente, we have indicativo presente plus congiuntivo presente. Those are the parts that are most important, I would say. In the congiuntivo passato, we have indicativo presente and then congiuntivo passato. Very nice. Now, let's review what we did in the lesson before this one. We have the congiuntivo imperfetto formula. Okay, imperfetto. We begin with the indicativo imperfetto plus che plus congiuntivo imperfetto. Very nice. What does that look like? Now we're going to say pensavo plus che plus fosse. Very nice. So, indicativo imperfetto, congiuntivo imperfetto. And now, what we'll be doing today, congiuntivo trapassato, we begin in the indicativo imperfetto plus che plus congiuntivo trapassato. What does that look like? Pensavo plus che plus fosse stato or fosse stata. Let's do another one using avere. So, pensavo plus che plus avesse fatto. So, what did we do here, and how does this kind of tie in with the greater themes at play? Okay, let's review one more time what we did over here. So with the congiuntivo presente and the congiuntivo passato, these two are related to one another because you need to know how to use the congiuntivo presente in order to successfully do the congiuntivo passato with its auxiliary verbs. Once you know how to use passato prossimo, this participio passato form of the verb is just rinse and repeat from something you studied way back when. Now, similarly, when we look to the congiuntivo imperfetto and trapassato, what we've got going on here is you need to know the congiuntivo imperfetto in order to successfully do the conjugation of the auxiliary verbs in this now compound version. Once again, rinse and repeat passato prossimo, what you learned in that lesson, the participio passato, past participle form of the verb. So there are many situations in which students will ask me, what's the most important thing for me to remember in the congiuntivo? So among, let's say, the uses, if you want to say, okay, what should I really focus on, because this is a lot of stuff for me to memorize, I would say the following. So long as you know congiuntivo presente and congiuntivo imperfetto, you are well on your way, because it's quite intuitive than just to use the compound version, because the presente and the imperfetto are the sort of the foundation for then what comes right after them. So I would say those two are your best bet. Focus on those two, and then the passato and trapassato are quite intuitive. Just helping verb in the congiuntivo imperfetto, and then main verb in the participio passato form. So let's now do some conjugating, which you're going to find quite easy. We're going to do a verb that uses avere and a verb that uses essere, and then we'll do some examples in context, and we'll be more than good to go. All right, let's begin with a verb that uses avere, such as fatto. We've been using fatto. I also prepared a bunch of verbs here on my notes. You know what? Let's use studiare. I want to use some different verbs today. Okay, so let's do studiare. Studiare means to study, and this is a verb that takes, let's put it in green, I prefer green. This is a verb that takes avere as its auxiliary in compound verb forms. So we're going to say io avessi studiato. Okay. So just to explain how we do this, because it's going to be quite logical going through all of the forms here, we have our auxiliary verb, which gets conjugated based on, obviously, who is doing the action, or you could think of the pronoun, right? The subject pronoun here. And then studiare is going to become studiato for all of the forms. This is what we call the participio passato form. Okay, participio passato form. This is the congiuntivo imperfetto form. All right, there we go. No gender and number agreement here, because obviously this is just us doing a verb with avere, so no gender and number agreement. That is coming, though. I'm just going to move these over here because I want to be able to continue our, let's do it like up here. Perfect. All right. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of these guys. I want to keep the conjugations, the conjugated forms rather, all next to each other. Cool. All right, let us move on. Tu avessi studiato. Nice. You had studied is what that means. Lui, lei, avesse studiato. He or she had studied, and it would mean had studied when you're building it up first with one of those trigger phrases like a pensavo che. I thought he or she had studied. Then we're going to do the noi form. Noi avessimo studiato. Once again, we're just going through avere in the congiuntivo imperfetto, because that's the thing that constantly changes. And our constant, the thing that doesn't change, is the main verb, which is in its participio passato form. And right here, I just filled in voi aveste studiato e loro avessero studiato. Fantastico, right? Allora. So now let's put this in some context here. Let's talk about an exam, why don't we? So, an example would be, pensavo che tu avessi studiato per l'esame. Okay. So this right here, as we were mentioning, we've got our trigger phrase, our pensavo che, that lets us know, hey, we're entering into personal opinion, uncertainty, doubt, those sorts of things that requires the use of the congiuntivo after the che. So we have avessi studiato. So I thought you had studied. Let's write that here. I thought. Doesn't matter for how long I thought this. It was just kind of the general thought I had lingering there in the background in the past. I thought you had studied for the exam. Now, when would you use this? You would use this in a situation where the context is letting you know that more than one action happened in the past. So what we understand when you're saying, I thought you had studied for the exam, doesn't it make you think like maybe you just were talking to your friend and they said, I don't know what happened. I got like a 40, I got a 50 on the exam. And you're like, what happened? I thought you had studied for it. Now, I know in everyday conversation, it's perhaps a lot more common for us just to say, I thought you studied, which would be pensavo che studiassi, using the congiuntivo imperfetto, which is perfectly fine. That is definitely pretty common to say. But we also have this form here, if you want to speak using the helping verb in the past, had. I thought you had studied for that exam. Because what you do when you insinuate that, or by saying that, what you're insinuating is that more than one action happened in the past. So the fact that you studied happened before you failed, unfortunately, or you took the exam in this situation. So that's when we would use that. So I'm going to make a note of that just so you guys have it. But what I like to do sometimes, I do this all the time in my live lessons, I'll often tell the students, I'm going to verbalize it to you first. Let's discuss it first, and then I'll write it down. This is something I also do when people work on pronunciation. When I work on pronunciation, when my students do, what I always say is, like, scan the text first, even read it aloud first, give it a once-over. Then we'll work on the pronunciation. Because sometimes just doing something cold, if you will, just like jumping right into it, doesn't always produce the best results. And then you're so focused on speaking that you don't even know the meaning. And you need to know the meaning in order to help your pronunciation. So, all right, so here's the note. When you use, so this goes for the trapassato, even in the indicative. I don't believe I did yet a video on that, but it works just like this. So anyway, when you use the trapassato, whether in the indicativo, or congiuntivo, the implication, meaning like what it implies, the implication is that more than one action took place in the past. So in this context, what we were talking about here, pensavo che tu avessi studiato per l'esame, what we think there yeah, I'm not going to put an arrow. What we think would be too long. What we think there is, you already studied and you already took the exam. That is what is implied in that example that we have up here. Okay? And then also the fact that I thought this also happened in the past. So we've got this series of actions that all took place in the past prior to this moment. And they all have something to do, obviously, with this moment. They all led up to this moment. Cool. Let's move on to a verb that uses essere, so we can do some gender number agreement. But now that we've got the sort of formula and the conjugation pattern down, this is going to be nice and easy. Let's use the verb andare, shall we? So andare means to go, and it requires the use of essere. So we're going to do some gender and number agreement. So essere is going to go in the congiuntivo imperfetto form. Io fossi andato or andata. Tu fossi andato or andata. I'm going to separate lui and lei. Lui fosse andato. Lei fosse andata. Oops. Noi fossimo andati or andate. Voi foste andati or andate, if it's just a group of girls. Loro fossero andati or andate. Fantastico. And this means I had gone, you had gone, used in the context of doubt, desires, hypothetical situations, all of that. So let's say, for example, that someone didn't know someone had gone to Italy, right? Let's say something like that. So we could say, non sapevo che tu fossi andato già 3 volte in Italia quest'anno. I want to make it a little longer here today. Okay. Fantastico. So what does this mean? I did not know that you had gone already 3 times to Italy this year. So I didn't know that you had already gone 3 times, not 2, 3 times to Italy this year. What I would say is that usually words like già, these little markers of time, they often go very nicely in between the auxiliary verb and the main verb. So I want to put it there because I prefer the way that sounds. So let's just do that real quick here. We're going to replace that. So, che tu fossi già andato. There we go. I like that. Che tu fossi già andato 3 volte in Italia quest'anno. Nice. So I'll write this down for you again. Or not again, I'll write down for you the translation. I didn't, not I don't. I didn't know that, and the that in English is always optional. I didn't know that you had already gone to Italy 3 times this year. Nice. And I always suggest to all my students, when writing numbers in the language that you're studying, write it out in words. Even though it's one of the first things you learn in a language, it's also one of the most neglected things because it's so rudimentary. Write numbers, particularly when you get to years. You always want to make sure you're doing that constant repetition of the fundamentals. Cool. I didn't know that you had already gone to Italy 3 times, so maybe now you're getting ready to go for your 4th time this year. And I'm like, wow, already 3 times have passed. or you already went for 3 times. All right? See how that works? Very nice. So what I'm going to do now for you guys is preview what we do in the periodo ipotetico. I often like teaching the Congiuntivo Trapassato using the periodo ipotetico because I find that to be perhaps more common. It's a lot more common. The phrases sound much more common than when we're doing these phrases here, because I know for me as an English speaker, I don't know if I would tell somebody, I didn't know you had gone to Italy already 3 times this year. I think I would say, I didn't know you went to Italy 3 times already. Now, as I say that now using had so much, I kind of feel like that's maybe not good grammar. But I would argue to say it's really common. So, what's a way that we can use these hads, right, in what I feel is much more of a common situation? Well, that's using the terzo grado of the periodo ipotetico. Periodo ipotetico. I already have these videos on my channel if you're interested. Not written with the digital whiteboard. I may include them in this series, we'll see, but I do have videos where at least I'm talking about this and they've got the text that comes up. So the terzo grado del periodo ipotetico. This is when we're talking about in realtà. So this means things that are done and over with, we cannot go back and change them. So we're also going to be using the past conditional, the condizionale passato with this, which is quite nice. We're going to have 2 main clauses of the sentence here. We could say, for example, se. So what do we want to say in English? So if you had done something, then it would have been something else. Those are kind of the things that I want to talk about. What would be a nice example? So let's talk about studying for the exam. Let's do that. Se tu avessi studiato di più, so if you had studied more, avresti superato l'esame. Nice. So this means if you had studied more, you would have passed the exam. If you had studied more, or I like saying, had you studied more. This is a way I personally speak a lot. Had you studied more, and both of these then mean, you would have passed the exam. Nice. I think I actually have a video on the congiuntivo imperfetto, sorry, the condizionale passato with the whiteboard. I think I have that. Yeah. As always, I'll be listing in the description useful videos that will help you in understanding this topic. But I think I've got that there. So anyway, if you had studied more, or had you studied more, you would have passed the exam. Avresti superato. So yeah, I personally find the terzo grado del periodo ipotetico quite helpful. The periodo ipotetico is just a category, a term that we use when referring to 3 degrees of hypothetical statements in Italian. Something that is realistic, something that's possible, and something that is impossible. And this is now an impossibility because the exam is over, you've already taken it, and now, based on what we're saying here, you failed it. But I'm saying, had the situation been different in the past, se tu avessi studiato di più, had you studied more, if only you had studied more, you can even include se solo tu avessi studiato di più. Here's what the result would have potentially been, avresti superato l'esame, però non si sa. However, we don't know. There's no real way of knowing because this is now an irreality. I don't think that works in English. It's an impossibility. Can't go back. So yeah, that is where I'm going to leave this lesson here. As you can see, it's really straightforward once you have done other parts of the congiuntivo, once you've also done, let's say, the periodo ipotetico or the condizionale. I tend to teach the periodo ipotetico after the congiuntivo, you'll also see in my playlists, because I have playlists here on my channel of all my videos organized in a logical order. So just besides this series where everything is numbered, I also have my videos organized in my Learn Italian Videos in Order playlist. You'll see that I have the periodo ipotetico after the congiuntivo, because the congiuntivo is the base for it. You have to know those verb forms before understanding the periodo ipotetico. So they work hand in hand, so if you already know one, it's going to help you with the other, you know? And I prefer doing it congiuntivo first, then periodo ipotetico, but, you know, do as you wish, right? You know, I've got these videos in a certain order, but feel free to jump around throughout the series. Whatever you think would make more sense. Sometimes if you just tuffarti prima, nella parte più profonda, if you just kind of, you know, chuck yourself into the deep end, sometimes then you can work backwards. I like doing that a lot, where I begin with an example and then I back into the rules. That is a huge part of my teaching style. So yeah, guys, let's wrap up the video here. Thanks so much for tuning in and checking it out. Be sure to check out the other videos in our series. Stay tuned, as always, for new videos that are coming. And if you'd like to work with me live, check out the link down below in the description to join my live weekly group lessons. And always remember to spread the love, guys. I'll catch you all next time. Ciao, ciao!